This is the BreadWinner Podcast, hosted by entrepreneur, influencer, and sales wolf, Tyler Harris, bringing you the insights from the most successful forward-thinking entrepreneurs and influencers, so that you can rise to the top and make more dough.
Now, let's get into the show.
What's up, everybody? This is Tyler Harris, and this is the BreadWinner Podcast. I am sitting with Bryce Prescott right now here in Salt Lake City, and he is a foot and a half away from me, sitting on the edge of my hotel bed.
Dude, careful how you paint this picture, man.
Let me paint this a little bit clear for you. He picked me up from the airport. He brought me to my hotel, and we've had a wonderful evening together, a nice dinner, which he didn't eat, so it was a cheap date, which is even more of a plus. No, but I'm actually in town for business in Salt Lake, and the power of social media. He saw that I was in town. He said, "Hey, man, let me pick you up from the airport. Let's hang out. Let's record a podcast." And that's not a not weird thing to do.
Not at all, man.
Like, that's what it's all about, having cool conversations with cool people. So I'm excited to have him on because we were going to have him on anyways, and this just made it all the better to do it in person because that's a way better of a conversation. So what I'd love to do, Bryce, man, number one, thank you for picking me up from the airport.
Absolutely, man. Anytime you're in town, you can whatever you need.
And thank you for being on the podcast. But tell everybody who you are, where you're from, just a little bit about you, and then we'll kind of go into some cool topics here and wrap for a little bit and close it out.
Sure. Before I get into that, though, man, so in your intro, who's howling? Like, who's the dude howling?
I don't know who that's howling. I think it was an actual wolf.
And so
there were no wolves harmed.
Do you know the Asian girl, too, that was like, we're ready to go? Like,
I don't.
You don't?
So
okay.
It was. So for all the listeners, Bryce is just taking you behind the curtain here. And you're getting to meet the little Wizard of Oz, but that is that was a $5 purchase, about $17, I believe.
Nice.
And it was the first one I got, and I went with it.
Dude, I love it, man.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be your chauffeur for the night.
Yes, thank you.
You and I met in St. George at the Outlier Podcast Festival.
We did.
And I loved your vibe and your style, and your boy TJ. It was just a good thing hanging out with you and Colby Colbus.
Yep.
And who am I? Who is Bryce Prescott? Well, that's a multifaceted answer. So I'll start with my profession. I'm a performance and mindset coach. My job is basically to help people to unscrew the top of their heads. My superpower in that realm seems to be to help people to reprogram their inner critic so that it tells different stories to you about you, helping you to make better decisions. I'll claim myself as an undiscovered stand-up comic. I'm just now getting into comedy, and that's been a really interesting sort of side angle to the coaching stuff, and we'll talk about a little bit about that today.
Absolutely.
I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a creative dude. I'm an artist. I play a bunch of musical instruments. I ski.
What instruments?
Saxophone, piano, sing.
What instrument was first? Piano?
Piano was first.
Yeah. I played the piano too.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
And then I got into alto saxophone. Nice. And then I expanded into all the saxophones because I didn't like the others feeling left out. I wanted to make sure that I played soprano, tenor, baritone. And then I got into a jazz band. I started spinning. That's a long time ago, man.
All day I dream about sax.
All day I dream about every good boy does fine. Yep. Music. It's funny that comedy's been something that's been a part of my development as a person and as a professional lately. As we discuss music as well, because music. Not to break my arm patting myself on the back, I speak a couple languages as well. I speak Portuguese and Spanish now. And music was the first language outside of English that I learned. Like, it literally is a different language, like training your brain to look and to do things differently. There's really something powerful in that has really blessed my life as an entrepreneur and as a businessman.
Are you someone that from the very beginning played by ear, or was it very much just learning how to read music?
No, actually, I still to this day have a tough time reading music. Everything has been by ear for me.
Me too.
It's funny because it naturally kind of led me into the more jazz side of music, with improvisation and kind of learning. Okay, these are the fence posts. Do whatever you want inside those fence posts instead of it having to be very rigid. With
Have you heard
classical.
Kanye talk about being able to see
colors?
Music, yeah. That he literally sees the music.
Yeah, Pharrell's another guy like that
really,
does that.
It's awesome.
I'm trying to remember what that gift is called.
Yeah.
It's a power.
Genius.
Truly iconic people are able to see past those barriers. Because if you think about, you and I have just had some incredible conversations at dinner about awareness and expansion and different things that we can do to help bring those things into our lives. But when it comes to music, we have like this sort of linear connection with it, where it's like this thing that we hear, but it's not. Like music is a combination of frequencies. Music is a combination of rhythms that present a certain emotional pull from inside of us that makes us think certain things, feel certain things. That's why when you're at the club and you're hearing a great hip hop song, that's why you want to move. Yep. So it's really like we become puppet strings to those frequencies.
It's true.
And that's the law of attraction. Like that's all these other wonderful things that are helping us to find and experience success, is just tapping into how things vibrate against each other.
For me, man, like I've got incredible ADD, and the piano is like the purest form of relaxation that I have, and it's just the ability to shut all those other areas of my brain off. And when I play, I usually don't play anything in particular. I just play. Just play. It's like allowing your brain to just go in those different directions, and like you said, feel those different, whether it's rhythm or melodies or whatever that may be. I moved into a new house recently, and we didn't have the space for it. I've got a baby grand piano, and it's a beautiful piano. It's just in the way our living room's set up. Quite frankly, my wife just didn't want it in there. And so it's in storage right now. And it's literally driving me crazy because I've been about a year now and I haven't played. So it's funny, with our daily vlog, I'm thinking about getting a keyboard, and somehow just as awkward as it can be, making it like a routinely just presented at the end, maybe. Like, you remember what was that show with Rev Run's house? Remember where he would like lay in the bathtub and like do a text message? Like maybe at the end of every episode, I'm just on the keyboard, kind of like what's the dude from The Office? Craig. What's that dude's name?
Which character?
The guy that plays
the black dude.
He's a comedian.
Craig. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Craig Robinson.
Craig Robinson.
Yeah. Like how he kind of like plays and just talks at the same time. It just may be the end, like the end, stuff, like kind of the ending of every.
I think you should, man. I think that with you doing your rhymes and stuff as well. There may be some hip hop beats in you too.
I've been known to throw a harmonica little neck brace on too. Just throwing that out there.
Nice, man.
A little Billy Joel. So anyways,
jack of all trades.
Enough about me. But man, so I'd love to really just dig in. Actually, tell a little bit more about. So you're in Salt Lake area.
Yes, sir.
And so, what's your main focus right now as far as business goes?
It's with my performance and mindset coaching business. Okay. So, on a day-to-day basis, either I'm involved in the coaching of my clients or in the creation of content that is deliberately designed to evoke an emotion that makes you think that I might be able to help you. Yeah. And then I've got a mechanism in place that makes it so you can connect with me.
So what does the ideal potential client look like?
I call them the half-in, half-out professional. Okay. So what that means is basically guys that are not just men, I coach women as well, but people that are still sort of halfway into a corporate structure organization, but yet have full control about the money they make. Okay. So half in, half out. So I've done really well with small business owners and entrepreneurs because as they build teams, they've got to really honor the structure that they're creating and the boundaries that are there. I do well with mortgage guys and even insurance guys. I do well with car salesmen, like people that have
commission-based.
Commission-based stuff. Like I do really well with that because one of the things I notice about kind of that whole world is it's very easy and tempting to have it be only about the money, but yet then they wonder why their health fails and their marriages go south, and they might have a lot of money and nice cars and houses, but yet they're soulless and they burn out and they don't have to. And so one of the reasons why I feel so compelled in a calling type way to really help those type of individuals is because I was one at a certain time. Got it. And I recognized that as great as money is, as beautiful of a blessing as it is to life, it's a lubricant. It helps things be easier. Yep. That it's also a cloak, and money can hide a lot of things that I can just see through now. I mean, like Superman, I can see through the wall and see what's really going on. And having been through some horrible health issues myself, having been through divorce and with children involved, and how challenging that's been. I'm hoping to be like, bro, you don't have to do it that way. Like,
Yeah.
let's make some small adjustments now so that you then can save what's good. And if you still need to adjust some things, like that's a different conversation. But I don't like seeing people go through unnecessary pain and heartache, and I kind of feel that I'm in a leverage position to help people avoid it.
A lot of times people that are in that field, whatever it may be, people that are kind of out on their own, kind of eating what they kill each day, week, and month, the things that they lean on are not sustainable long term. And
well,
so it's almost
porn,
like everyone you look
booze,
at.
like there's all sorts of like addictive vices that they lean into to like check them out for a little bit because they don't like to be alone with their own thoughts. Yeah, and that's sad to me. Like,
that's true.
The genius of this world lies in between our own ears and in our hearts, and like if we can tap into that, all of us are our own versions of like these superstars we want to be. It's just a matter of kind of cracking the code.
It's interesting. I just did a podcast with Drama. We were talking about that, but that's one of the things that he said is that he was talking about how people don't realize how close they are. Yeah, like people see people on TV and all over social media, and there's that separation. Like, oh, well, that's those kind of people. But what people don't really take hold of is there's really not much separating you from them. Yeah. Some intentions and the right actions and the right plan, like you're not all that different, which is it's extremely encouraging to me, and I would think encouraging for you to be able to talk about that with your clients. Like, it's not life-changing processes. We're not going to break you down and completely revolutionize the way that you do things. It's just a little pivots or a little change in the right way that can make all the difference in the world. It's just incredible.
You're totally onto it, man. Like my first offering that I have as a part of my business is this 12-week deal that I put people through. And the very first interaction we have together is I have them go through this process I call the starting line, which basically is just accounting for where you're at. And something as simple as that, something as simple as like looking yourself in the face and having to answer questions like, who are your 3 most challenging relationships? Who are your 3 most prized relationships? Writing that down, like getting in touch with what really is going on there. And then where are you at with your money? Where are you at with your relationship, like your most intimate relationship, whether that's a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or spouse? Where are you at in your body? Like one of the things that has been is, I talked in the beginning about stand-up and doing comedy recently. One of the things that's so overlooked in self-development, in success-based achievement principles, is the connection that your body has to learning and growth. Like, you can't have a success and abundance-based mindset without involving your body in the process. Yeah. And so when somebody is just willing to say, well, where exactly am I at with my body? What is my eating habits? What are my sleeping habits? Something as simple as just having that in front of you can change your world. Like, it can literally put you in a position of power instead of being asleep at the wheel, which unfortunately is what I see most, is that powerful people just fell asleep at the wheel.
But that's, to me, there's so many people out there that it's so easy to not think about it.
Yeah. It's tempting to not
think about it. And to just bury it and bury it and bury it, and all of a sudden you've buried it for a decade. I remember Andy Frisella the other day did a post. He's like, "Have you ever had that cheat meal and then woke up and it's 3 years later?" like it's just it happens. But just that act of writing it out, like you just said, like we had a workshop where we brought a guy in recently and did a workshop where people had to write down something that they've never told anybody before, and all of a sudden I'm looking around the room, and 3/4 of the room's bawling, crying. Yeah. And it's not like they were upfront sharing it. They were just the act of writing something down that they had never told about their past because they had buried it for so long, and those emotions started coming back up when they actually brought it back up. It was freaking powerful. Like, there was like this tension in the room all of a sudden. It was just like you could feel it. But it's so right. It's like everyone wants the easy answer. Everyone wants the coach to come along and says, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's all you need to do, this step, this step, this step. But what you're saying is like, hey, the first thing we're going to do is figure out where in the world you're at. Like, what are the issues? What are the problems? Like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I want to talk about like how you're going to, give me the shortcuts. Like, I want you to give me to where I want to go. No, well, to get where you want to go, like, let's talk about where
you have to know where you're starting from.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
No race just randomly starts like somewhere. Like you have a line where you go, okay. That's why I call that whole process the starting line. But to add to what you're saying, it's very true that entrepreneurs in general are already a different breed.
Yeah.
Which means that they already have skill sets and mindsets that are different than the status quo, which enable them to achieve success easier. That's statistically proven. Like the world has been changed by entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You look at every major Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, these guys were entrepreneurs, man. Like they wanted to do something different. You couldn't put them in a box.
Yeah.
And so if you are that person, woman or man, you are already special, right? Yeah. And not to be all, let's talk about safe spaces and be all hugs and everything, but a lot of people won't recognize how great they actually are.
Yeah.
And it just takes a couple small dusting off. I've had countless conversations with clients where they've gone through and they're experiencing massive results and shifts and everything. They're like, dude, I had no idea. And I'm like, dude, you realize we just dusted you off a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't any big, massive shift.
But I think the opposite is also true. Yes, they're special, but they're also freaking complicated.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And they have way more stuff. No, you're fine. Like they also have way more stuff. Naturally.
Yeah.
Because of like the same thing that makes them a genius makes them extremely difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
And extremely difficult to understand and extremely difficult, and that's kind of the beauty of it, I think.
You and I on the drive from the airport, we were listening to Kanye West's new album. Yeah. He has that song Yikes, man.
Yeah.
And I told you I have my own podcast, and I did a whole whole episode about that end part where he's just like taking the power back from his bipolar disorder in quotes and saying, this is my superpower.
Yeah.
And his ability to swing in those shifts. And you don't have to like the guy to respect him as an icon.
Yeah.
And where I took that is like, I don't care if anybody likes him or doesn't like him. I'm looking at that going, that in a very odd way validates my own struggles with depression, my own suicidal thoughts that I've had in the past, the own challenges I've had. Because like, dude, that has put me through a gauntlet that creates a sense of sensitivity and urgency and awareness that I have that is, I'm unique.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like being able to take the power back from something that's labeled as a weakness.
Dude, it's so true. Like, it's literally like he's sitting there saying, with the crazy things that he's done, the things that get the news where people want to hate on him. It's like he wants to stand there and say, like, don't hate me for the very things that you love me for.
Yeah.
Like don't sit here and condemn me for the absolute reason why you love me. like, because it's the exact same thing. You're just seeing the other side of it.
Yeah.
Like, this is why you have made me into this crazy celebrity because I'm that way.
Every coin has two sides.
Exactly.
Man.
And then when
one
you
without the other.
And so what you're telling me is so I'm this way. You love this part, but you can't see. Like, I have to hide that entire other part that makes me who I am. And then when you do, then you act shocked. Like, oh my God, did you hear what Kanye did? Did you see what Kanye just did up on stage? He said this. He's wearing this hat. Like all this stuff is like that's.
Well, dude, the essence of that same thing is why successful entrepreneurs sabotage themselves with infidelity. They cheat on their spouses with why they're alcoholics or they have coke addictions, or it's because what they've done to create this incredible high output in their life has come with a deficit.
Yeah.
And they haven't known how to deal with that deficit in a healthy way, and so they turn to the easiest things, which are stimulants or drugs or sex or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just, the pattern is the same, man. If people would shift up being curious about the uniqueness of an individual like Kanye and start looking at pattern recognition and seeing, well, what are the patterns that are there? You'll see that every single one of us are so alike and it's so predictable how to fix ourselves that, I mean, that would be an upward spiral towards a better planet.
Absolutely.
That sounds ethereal, but it's like it's the truth. It's so much simpler. The way, like I hear you say, like, we're complicated. Yes, we are, but we're simple in our complication. Like when you break down what we're complicated about, it's root.
Yeah.
It's root behavior. It's a desire to be. Oprah Winfrey said it. She says everybody wants to be heard, they want to be seen, and they want to know that they matter. Yeah. Those three things. Every problem that somebody gets themselves into boils down to a lack in one of those areas.
It's so funny you just said that about being understood. I was at an event this past weekend, there was a guy as a sales coach came in from Singapore named Eric Fang. He's incredible. And one of the things he said, people don't buy because they understand. They buy because they feel understood.
Yeah.
Which I'd never, ever looked at it. I'd never thought about it that way. But it's so true. It's like that's all people really want. And part of what makes the entrepreneurial landscape so difficult is spouses of entrepreneurs. Like if you could say like they're the real MVP. Like a spouse of an entrepreneur to have to handle that deficit and have to handle the other side. It's a tremendous, like I talk about my wife all the time. Like I could not do any of what I do if she wasn't as strong as she is, because she has to put up with a lot. Quite frankly, any entrepreneur's wife or husband has to put up with a lot because there's a lot going on there. But there's another aspect that I know I really wanted to get into, and that is this aspect of using humor, because as you and I were just talking about, it's something that is not used enough and may be another one of those superpowers that if unleashed or unlocked, I guess would be the better phrase, in the right way, can make a huge difference. So
I believe it's both unleashed and unlocked.
Yeah.
Well, so here's...
Unlocked and then unleashed, I guess.
Sure, yeah. So here's something that's interesting. So most people, especially salespeople and entrepreneurs, most of them are fans of comedy. Like their taste is different for sure. But everybody likes to laugh for the most part, and if you're a fucking psychopath, you don't. So, so if you think about that, so I'll just ask you this, Tyler. Yeah. So think about a funny comedy bit that you remember.
Okay.
Just first one pops off the top of your head.
Man, I just thought about a really bad one.
Okay, well, you don't have to give the details for it, but
but I literally just started thinking about Cat Williams.
Cat Williams. Okay, so you can hear, hey man, like the Cat Williams voice, and you're remembering the bit. Yeah, don't you know? I can't say some of his words as a white dude, but so you I was able to ask you a question, and you instantly recalled
and started
laughing because you could remember that.
Yeah.
Now, if we were to go deeper to that, you could remember specific punchlines of the bit. You could remember the story, everything.
Absolutely.
The reason for that is what people overlook when it comes to achievement. The reason for that is when you're watching that, and like I said before, your mindset and your body are intrinsically tied. Your brain is a part of this whole process. When you laugh, it instantly takes what you're laughing about and puts it into a different part of your brain that you recall almost immediately. Almost like a song you would hear when you're in high school. Those songs you bring up, or smells or whatever.
Sure.
Like it puts it into a different spot.
Yeah.
The weird part is that we don't ever use laughter to learn important shit. We're like learning about remembering Cat Williams talking about some freaking hood rat or whatever, or Dave Chappelle talking about whatever, and I'm Rick James or whatever, you know. But when you so for me as a performance coach, I decided, well, okay, so I need to maximize this superpower, and I really need to learn how to understand the science of the angle of comedy. So as a coach, basically what I do, my job is I maximize angles.
Yep.
I show you, hey dude, look at it from this perspective, right? Comedy's the exact same thing. You hear guys like Jim Gaffigan. Jim Gaffigan, one of his most famous bits is a fucking dumb bit about a Hot Pocket. It's retardedly stupid, but yet people love it because of the angles. He has bits where he talks about how he jokes about standing in line at Disneyland. Yeah. Standing in line at Disneyland ain't funny, man. I've done it. But the way he tells that story, it's an angle. Yeah. So what if then we were then to apply from a growth or training or sales or whatever aspect of where we're in a client relationship, we're in a speaking environment where we're using the angles of storytelling to promote laughter so that the message sticks. And oh, by the way, it's way more fun to sit there and laugh when you're in those meetings than it is to have some dude yell at you and have it be this really dark, heavy energy emotion of tragedy, which is another tool that people use.
Absolutely.
I've found that I've done a bunch of open mics and written jokes, and the whole world building associated with trying to write comedy bits and everything is so hard that when I step out of that world and back into the world I'm more accustomed to, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm kind of awesome over in this other world. But the humility or not the humility, but the forced humility is it just reminds me how important it is to that. It's a cultural thing, though. Like, if you look, like, the Oscars don't have a best comedy movie. Like, comedy is, and the lighthearted nature of what it means, it's dude, come on, man, we got to get serious. Like, people want to take the fun out of it and get back to business, so to speak. I want to flip that narrative on its head and be like, okay, yeah, you can be an idiot and, like, do bad things and not be serious and pay attention to the right stuff, but you can absolutely be focused and intentful and execute at a high level while laughing your ass off the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about it, dude. You get together with your buddies, everybody gets laughing. You and I talked about this at the Outlier Podcast Festival. Part of your persona that you have a little bit of a challenge with sharing is the smart ass side of you that is quippy and wit, and your wit is strong. And there's nothing wrong with either way. It's just that's a mechanism of kind of the culture of entrepreneurship.
It's interesting you talk about it because it's so at that same event this weekend, this guy showed a video, and it was a very emotional video. The guy was crying in the video, and it was just this very dark video. And he literally got up on stage afterwards and said that the only reason that he was showing that video was the fact that, like, nobody remembers exactly what they were doing on September 9th.
Right.
They remember September 11th because of what happened in that emotions, it locked it into their brain forever. And so he said, I wanted to show this video so that what I'm about to talk about next, you'll remember it because you're going to remember that video because it triggered those emotions in your brain and it'll be locked in. And it's true, but how much more enjoyable is using laughter if you can get the same result. You don't have to stand up there and go through something tragic. You can just have a good time and actually be enjoyable, and people still remember it in the exact same way.
Well, any of your sales guys that listen to this know that, like, the swings are where it's like the market, man. Like, if you can take advantage of the swings. So I can respect what that guy did with an emotionally charged video to make that work. A really impactful way is to have tragedy and humor be tied together. Like, I've done some study, and Judd Apatow's, he's a famous movie maker, and he does stand up, and he's very influential in Hollywood with his movies and stuff. He talks about how when he does this master class to kind of train you on how to do all this, to write comedy and to perform it and all that. And he says that if you were to actually read a comedy script, it's supposed to read like a drama, but it's the angles of the performance that make it funny. And that goes back to Jim Gaffigan and his Hot Pocket Bick. That goes back to Dave Chappelle. It's about the angles and the delivery that tap into a different energy source inside of you for the funny. And it's just so much better, man. Like, I mean, I love getting together with my buddies and, like, having deep, meaningful conversations, but they're it's sprinkled with some fucking laughs too, man.
Absolutely. Who are some of, like, your biggest influences from a comedic standpoint?
Actually, ironically, a guy named Chris D'Elia.
Okay.
So he's on the come up right now. He's been on 2 TV shows. He was on Whitney and he was on Undateable. And he's been floating around Hollywood for a while. He's a regular Comedy Story tours. He's got this really funny podcast. He's not everybody's cup of tea, but what I like about him is he's found this way to be, like, to poke fun at some of the dumb shit that's happening in our culture without being political about it.
Okay.
And I like he's very physical in his comedy. He's got this kind of funny way about him, and he's just this. Brian Callen's another one. Joe Rogan. I love Joe Rogan's. Like, so I'm not the biggest fan of, like, even though I love, like, Jerry Seinfeld's comedy, I'm not a big fan of that style of comedy of like the quickie, the one line, like, here's a little 3-sentence story and then on to the next one. I like the world building of, like, when Joe Rogan talks about being on a boat and being high and the scene the moon spin. He's talking to dolphins. It's like I enjoy the storytelling arc of that more, and so the comedians that I like are more like that, more storyteller types.
So what's your process like? Because I know every comedian has a very, very different process, and you hear some stuff about, like, the process that, like, Chris Rock goes through is very different than, like, a Dave Chappelle, and, like, their cadence and their structures of their sets. So what does that look like for you? And has that evolved, or is that kind of, like, been from day one?
Well, so in full disclosure, like, so again, not to break my arm, pat myself on the back here, but I've always been the funny guy out of the group of my friends. Like, smart ass, like, you got to admit, see it firsthand when we were in St. George. I enjoy that. So the joke writing process is a completely different animal, though. Mm-hmm. And then the performance of jokes in the stand-up capacity is way different. Yeah. That's why funny people don't naturally translate to be great comics. Like, I'm experiencing that sort of, like, brutal honesty with myself right now. But the joke writing process is something it's really fun, and it's a lot more organic than people would understand. Well, I guess they'd understand it, but so to give an example, like one of I have this. This is a grown-up podcast, so I can use grown-up topics. Okay, so I have this bit where I talk about Kegels, right? Okay. So Kegels are the exercise that women do to return their box to its original packaging, right? So my whole bit is based off of how fucked up is that's actually named after a dude. There's this doctor, his name's Dr. Anthony Henry Kegel. He was from Iowa in the late 1800s, and I have this whole like story where I talk about like that guy's got to have a granddaughter, like she's got to introduce herself as like, hi, I'm Allison Kegel. It's like a tough break, right? Yeah. So that whole process, like I have like a 5-minute bit on that where I go through a bunch of the different aspects of it, and the whole thing started so my wife, by profession, is a Pilates instructor. Okay. And part of the work that Pilates instructors do is like helping women to tighten up their pelvic floor, which is basically where what a Kegel is. Mm-hmm. And she comes home one day and she's all pissed off. She's like, I fucking hate the name Kegel. And I go, well, what should we call it, babe? She's like, it's a pussy push-up. That's what we should call it.
Oh my God.
So like that sentence, like it's not a Kegel, it's a pussy push-up. My mind's like, well, where did that come from? So I like, in this crazy fit, go Google, where did Kegel get its name? I find out about this doctor. I start thinking about, okay, so he was a gynecologist. Did he want to be famous? Like, so I started
then writing the feminine perspective, like, of course he named it after himself.
Right, yeah. Like he's this arrogant guy that's like, of course
he wants this to go down in history.
In the world to have mine, And so it became this like kind of almost like storyboarding. Like, so I have this whiteboard and I'm like, okay, so Kegel, where did he get his name? This guy. Okay, so what about his family? What about this? Okay, so his practice. And then what about this? And then I had to bring in Amy, and I have this part of my bit where I'm like, my wife actually tightens pussies for a living. It doesn't say that on her business card. It just says her name. So like all those pieces then, and I've performed it several times, I would rearrange the order to kind of find out how the flow would work best. And every single one of my bits that I've written have been a similar thing like that. Like I have another bit where I talk about how we really need to mean what we say and say what we mean. And I go into this whole thing about when did it become the standard to say somebody's normal that they put their pants on one leg at a time? Like that's not normal. Like, and I have this whole world that I built around that. And then I have another Kegel where I talk about Shaquille, or another bit where I talk about Shaquille O'Neal and how big his dick must be, and like how his girlfriend must have like a boa constrictor.
And she's tiny too.
Yeah,
that's
so
scary.
So all of that stuff, like the whole joke writing process is it starts with one thing, and then you build all these ideas around it, and then it's just like playing with it.
There's a file of plotographs
right
somewhere that's just probably going to disturb someone.
I use a digital journal called Day One on my iPhone, and like awesome. I'll be walking around and have these funny ideas, and it's like, and I'll pick it up, and so like I have like tons of these entries where it's just like a simple sentence. Like I'm working on one now that I haven't figured out how to do yet, but I basically talk about how messed up it is that like waking up with a hard on is how we know that our hormones are in check as a dude. And then like there's like a flip side of like, well, does that mean if women anyway, it's this whole like,
yeah.
And it's this fun diversion, but yet really applicable to everything else that I do because it's angles, man. Yeah. It's angles. If you're struggling with sales and you're out of shape and your wife hates you and everything, there's an angle to get underneath your story. Mm-hmm. And if I can get you laughing while we exploit that angle, you're going to like, it's almost like we just tilled the garden. Like the soil is fresh and there's all this new nutrients. Oh, okay. Like it makes it easier for you to make decisions and execute on your decisions.
It almost seems like that humor is like the greatest like equalizer. Like you can be a horrible human being. you walk in the room and people know you're a horrible human being. You start making them laugh. They're like, I love
Have you
this
been talking
guy.
to my wife?
Exactly. Like, I love this guy. Like, this guy's the best guy. I'm like, he's not the best guy. He just makes you laugh. Like, what are you talking about? He's the best guy. Like, it makes no sense.
It really is a superpower, man. Making people laugh is...
When I was a financial advisor, like right out of school, I used to keep like one of those like just cheesy joke books, like kid jokes, like ones that are on like popsicle sticks. And I used to keep it right next to my phone because I was calling old people all the time. And I would literally call these old clients and like they wouldn't let me start talking until I told them some stupid joke. And I would just like look it up. I'm like, all right, I'm calling Mr. Smith. I'm like, let me flip to page 38. I found him like dog-eared. I'm like, hey, Mr. Smith, so, what do you call, why do they call seagulls seagulls? Because if they were by the bay, they'd be called bagels. He'd be like, oh. And the next thing you know, I'm like, so we're going to come in and roll that 401k over. That's like, but it was like the greatest, like, to say that humor builds trust is true. Like it really does, and it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. But it's
angles
breaking
of those
down
emotions.
barriers.
It's the swings. Tears build trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
But humor gets like downplayed,
so it's
or minimized. They're like, oh well, it's just
So it's almost as though humor is like another form of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Because that would be the tears, like any type of like if someone has shown emotion, you're like, oh, well, I feel like this person has opened up to me. I guess it's the exact.
Well, why do you think when people laugh really hard they cry?
Interesting, mind blown.
Bro, this is what I'm gonna do, man.
We're gonna change the world one
crying
bit at a time.
At a time, man. It's so awesome, bro.
Oh, that's awesome. What are some other What are some other comedians that you love?
I'm a student of comedy. Most recently I've been really, really inspired. I brought up Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
He released a couple months ago on HBO this 2-part documentary about Gary Shandling and his life.
I do not know who Gary Shandling is.
Bro, it's on HBO.
Okay.
It's so great. It's basically okay. So, truth be told, it was this specific documentary. It's been out for more than a couple months, but that made me take the leap into trying stand-up.
Wow.
And the reason why specifically is that Gary Shandling, he was a very famous comedian, beloved in the comedic community. And he was a Buddhist, and with the way that his life was described, he was kind of like a life coach for comedians. All of these great comedians and even not so great comedians had these stories about how Gary had been so kind to them and an extended love and support and passion to him. And he had one of the very first kind of quasi-fake reality TV shows called The Larry Sanders Show on HBO, which is still incredibly progressive. It's fucking hilarious. Wow. And I loved kind of the warmth of him as a person, and he was really, really funny. And I'm like, dude, I identify with that on an energetic level. I could be my own version of that. And so I love his stuff. Recently, it's crazy, on Showtime, they've been replaying Eddie Murphy Raw.
Yeah.
Dude, I forgot how funny Eddie is, man.
I haven't seen that in forever.
Oh my gosh, dude, he is so funny. Like, that's him. I remember not too long ago, just for context, right? I saw this every time I go to LA, I try to go to the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
And I saw this picture that was taken at the Comedy Store that Dave Chappelle had put on his Instagram. And in the picture was Dave Chappelle, was Eddie Murphy, was Chris Rock, was Chris Spencer, who's another black comic, was who else was there? There was a couple other that I'm missing, and in the caption it said Eddie was still the funniest. That was all the caption said. And you think about what a all-time talented dude Eddie Murphy is. We don't hear much of him nowadays because he's got all his money, he does kids movies and stuff, and he's got a family, but I mean, Raw, Delirious, dude, like. I remember sneaking to listen to that as a record when I was a kid because it was so dirty, but laughing my ass off when Eddie, half. Like when he's talking about finding a woman who's not going to take half a shit, you know, like in the thing with like Bill Cosby. It's kind of funny in retrospect. He has that bit where he talks about Bill Cosby calling him up and saying he curses too much, and then he does this impression of Richard Pryor that is so good. Anyway,
that's awesome.
Love
have you ever seen Mitch Hedberg? Did you ever see him?
No, rest in peace, man. Like
he was one of my favorites.
Such a good comedian, man.
He was incredible.
I never saw him live. I should clarify that. I've seen his comedy. He's great. One of the greats, man.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming for you, humor probably played a big role in getting you through some of those dark times of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that something that like it never faded? Like you always kept your sense of humor in every situation that ever came up?
Well, it's really kind of poignant that you bring that up because no, actually, I tried for the longest time to not be. When I grew up in an interesting family dynamic, and my mom might listen to this podcast, so I'll just leave it at that. Love you, Mom. But I was very well behaved as a young man. Mm-hmm. Didn't do anything out of line. Yeah. Until I was in my 30s, actually. Yeah. But I was always funny, and I was always able to kind of warm people together through humor. But I was very introverted, extroverted. Like I could be the life of the party in the room, but then I'd have to go be a hermit for a day to like recoup, you know, and kind of like handle the output. Yeah. And when I got into business, I really kind of misunderstood the power of authenticity when it came to that funny part of me. And I had a very successful run with real estate during the crash where I was on the right side of it. And then I got into commodities, and then I got into podcasting, into coaching. And it wasn't until about the last year or so where I realized that I was doing myself a disservice. And, you know, to give a testimonial to the power of coaching, I started being coached by this woman out of Australia it was really this fucking froofy shit, man. It was like this personality archetype training, right? Where there's like 12 archetypes of your personality, and they have names like the innocent, the jester, the nurturer, the ruler, the maverick, the romantic. Like each one of those has characteristics, right? And every person has a primary and a secondary archetype. Well, I learned through this process of working with her that my primary archetype was the jester. Okay. Jester's a comedian. It's the irreverent guy. But one of the powers of the jester archetype, and I know this to be true for myself, is that I'm able to take seemingly opposing ideas and bring them under one roof and have them blend very easily. My secondary archetype was called the innocent, which is a very simple, like basically like a churchgoer. Like faith-based, wants it to be all blue skies and simple colors and the whole thing. And for the longest time, I would judge my jester part of me as like the devil on my shoulder. Interesting. Like when I would be in those situations where I wanted to crack some fucking joke that was going to make everybody boil, I wouldn't because I would think that's the wrong move, and I'd just kind of subdue that. And, in the era of social media, or age of social media and everything, like, true authenticity is power, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would have a hard time with my podcast getting traction the way I wanted it to because I kept kind of squashing that dude. Yeah, makes sense. And I got out of her program, like, you know what, the reins are off, man. Like, fuck this noise. I'm going to be Bryce. Like, I can be this very simple, loving, compassionate, emotionally intelligent man that also can make you laugh till you cry and introduce things to you that you hadn't considered by poking holes in your story. Yeah. And I really started to feel like the gloves were off. Like, finally, man, I can just be myself. And
so that was when the new podcast started.
Yeah.
And because what was the old one called?
The old one was called Rules of Success. It was 2.5 years. It still is a great podcast. Yeah. I mean, I had some freaking murderers on there as the great guests. But I shut it down last summer because I was experiencing like this kind of, I talked about this in my remarks at the Outlier Podcast Festival. I was creatively avoiding the work I needed to do to really get to the bottom of who I was and how I was going to be a better coach and the whole thing. Yeah. So I shut it down. I mean, and a lot of people, and I wasn't kidding at the festival when I said I lost friendships over it. Like there were people that thought I was a quitter. Wow. Bro, you're doing like, and it's crazy to me that would be that would be how they would arrive at this. I'm like, sure. Eat dicks, man. Yeah. Anyway, but I shut it down and I realized that I have a talent, I have a gift of dancing between those two things. You listen to my podcast now, and it's just called Bryce Prescott Show. You know, and it's this dance between like really serious, like thought out, provoking sort of self-development, helpful type stuff, and comedy.
And it's probably therapy for you.
Oh, it's
like
great.
You just like, I'm doing this for me, but other people are going to get something out of this. And that's the most most powerful. Yeah. Well, I hope one person listens to this. My fan.
Shout out to my fan.
I hope all my fan.
Yeah, I love all my
What's
fan.
that one rap song
too.
when he talks about the only fan you have is the one spinning on the ceiling? But,
right, man.
But dude, that's awesome. And so now, how many episodes do you have now?
I just released yesterday my 37th.
Okay, awesome.
So I when I started it, I had this, I was trying to be rigid, like 2 a week, and then I kind of realized, I'm like, that's that actually in a weird way goes against the purpose of my show. The purpose of my show is a very organic, expressive thing. And so I started, and every episode, in the middle was all on video too. And now it's like I'll reduce some that are audio only. I'll do video ones that I'll live stream. And I recognize that by doing it that way, it's a harder climb into relevancy as far as like getting audience and influence that way. I don't care though. Like,
it makes it more.
I feel really like I'm, in the wine library days of Gary Vee at the beginning. Like people are gonna find my stuff later on and be like, "Holy shit, this stuff is amazing."
Oh yeah,
because I'm proud of it. Like I had some back listen because I'm very analytical about my craft, and I'm like, okay, how do I get better at this? Mm-hmm. So I'll listen to my own stuff, and I'll be like, dude, this is good. Like.
You're right. When you talk about the structure, like everyone will tell you that exact thing. Like, oh, if you want your fans, your audience, they need to know, like, oh, it's Tuesday, where there's going to be a podcast. But man, with the first podcast, I started the Sales Wolves podcast with my business partner and I. There are so many episodes that are just terrible, because they were forced, and it was literally we sat down and we're like, crap, we have to do a freaking podcast today.
Well, you're trying, like, who are you proving? Like, I had this conversation. I was like, who am I proving it to?
Yeah. Like, Joe, like, it's Sales Wolves Wednesday. Like, we have to do like, there has to be a podcast on Sales Wolves Wednesday or someone's gonna die. Like,
they will die. The wolf will get them.
The wolf is at the door, literally. Yeah. And those episodes, like, literally, we had times where we got done with it and I was like, that was freaking terrible. And he's just like, yeah, that was rough. And I'm like, I can't even air that. But you're right. Like, it's
think about this though. Like, so Joe Rogan has the most popular podcast. You have no idea when he's producing an episode. Yeah. Who's another one? Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, massively successful podcast. You have no idea when he's releasing stuff. Yeah, like,
it's true.
Other than like being committed to doing one every day, which is kind of like with the Daily Bread. And, I mean, as an aside, dude. Props to your level of commitment on that, man, dude. Like, seeing it in real time with what you do with TJ and the quality of your vlogs and everything. I subscribe, obviously. I listen, I comment. Dude, it's so impressive what you pull off. That. It's badass. But
I appreciate that. But, man, with that, though, like, just like you said, you're in the wine library days with Gary Vee. Like, I've gotten so focused on the fact that with analytics and the number of likes and number of shares and number of follows, like, Gary said something the other day. He said, with Daily V, his daily vlog, he said, I'm doing this for the recall.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not, he said, if we never get another viewer ever, that's fine, because I'm doing this for the recall. And I started thinking about the fact that, like, it's not just the recall, it's the legacy. Yeah. Like, the conversations that you're having are helping you, they're helping others, but, like, your kids are going to be able to watch them when they're 45, when they're 60. They're going to be able to listen to these things and watch these things. And I think about, like, my daughter. She's going to be able to see me talking about this sacrifice of being away from her and all this stuff. Like, she's going to be able to watch that and understand that. Yeah. And, like, for me to be able to have that, like, for me to know that technology exists and it's not all that complicated, that I can record and document all this of my life forever, for generations to be able to see, and me not, is like shame on me. Yeah. Like how, like, imagine if you had freaking 500 episodes of your grandfather's vlog. I would watch it every day. Like, I would be obsessed with it, like that type of stuff. Like, it didn't exist back then, but, like, we have the ability now to create the most incredible legacy for generations and generations. And to me, it's like it's a responsibility. Like, that's what I pull on with the vlog when it does feel a little forced. It's like, no way, like, it's just documenting what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't some big production. It's just like, I need to talk about how I don't feel like doing this right now. And someone's going to resonate with that fact.
Some of my most favorite episodes that you've done have been where you've been like, I mean, you recently got sick on your trip.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I felt for you in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, the fact you were doing that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You look through. Okay, so as I've shared with you before, like I grew up religious, you know, and one of the tenets of that was record keeping. That you know, I've been an avid journal writer from the time I was a kid. I have literally thousands of pages of journals that I've written, and I've kept that commitment as an extension of this idea that if I don't write my own story, who will, right?
Yep.
And when the advent of live streaming on Facebook Live or Periscope came out, or stories and stuff like that, I see that as a literal extension of that responsibility to tell your own story.
Absolutely.
I have 2 daughters that I love to death that don't live with me, that are from a previous marriage. The connection that I have through Instagram alone with doing stories and showing my life and them showing me theirs, it has no value. It's invaluable. It's amazing. And you know, it's funny, bringing back comedy, Chris Rock has this bit where he talks about how, you know, he got divorced and he was married for 14 years, but the time that he was together was bigger than his parents' 40 years, because his dad would go to work at like 7 and wouldn't see his mom until 9, and they wouldn't like talk and everything. But we have a higher level of connection. And that gets, you know, the recording of our own legacy, the recording of our own story is a responsibility. There's not a single person on this planet that shouldn't be actively involved in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Not one.
I agree. That was the main focus of my keynote that I gave on Friday, and it was regarding building a personal brand. But the whole premise was, and I asked everybody, like, raise your hand if you're currently building a personal brand. Like, oh, by the way, we're all building a personal brand, or we all have a personal brand being built for us.
Yeah, or you're either
it's just whether you're intentionally,
And
then one of my basic pillars of that was write your own your autobiography. And it's like, it's my story. Like, I don't want to just passively sit by and let other people write my story. Like, it's my story. Yeah. Like, I'm going to tell it. And with your brand, like, what, it's no different. It's no more complicated than just what people think of when they hear your name, or what people talk about when you're not in the room, or it's just your reputation. That's all it is. It's all it is. Like, people talk about this personal branding like it's Elon Musk and you're sending spaceships into, you know, outer space. Like, it's just your reputation.
You read my emails, dude?
Yeah, like it's all it is. Like, it's literally all it is. But the fact that, like, are you the one that's purposely, actively building that on a daily basis and telling that story, or are you just allowing others, based on assumptions, majority, to tell that story for you? And geez, like, that's the last thing. I mean, that drives me crazy.
Here's one of the angles about that I think a lot of people overlook. So, as having been an entrepreneur my entire life, when you're willing to risk things, you fail. That's just a fact. Yep. And so sometimes those failures come with unfavorable stories written about you. Mm-hmm. I've personally been sued by the state of Utah Securities and Exchange Commission. I've had people that weren't stoked about what happened in our business. I've been divorced. I've had other stuff happen. That if somebody was just to start going deep dive Googling me, they'd find some shit that they would probably want some questions to, some answers to. And because, though, I've been so active about, like, okay, yeah, that's a part of my story, but that is not the story, it's very difficult to hold on to any of the negativity that would come from whatever that story is trying to paint, because the bigger picture is that, some things didn't land where I liked them to land. Yeah. But guess what I've been doing for the last 10 years? Like, creating value, helping people, like introducing people to ways to do the same for themselves, sharing my pain, sharing my laughter, sharing all this so that you can know. It just becomes lazy if you don't want to find out about people at this point.
And that in itself, like, transparency, like, that is the superpower, because it gives other people the permission to tell their stuff, or at the very least, it just gives people the assurance of they're not the only one. They're not an island. They're not the only one that's ever dealt with bankruptcy or divorce or a business failure or a massive partner split, like children problems, like, you know, something that was done to them as a child, like, you know, assault, like all these things. Like, by exposing those things and talking about the actual truth, like, to me now, like, that's my focus now, and it's going to become more and more prevalent in my content, is just exposing, like, everything, because of what it does for someone that may have experienced the same, or just someone that's experienced anything, and by you exposing something, it gives them the audacity to uncover a little bit of their stuff. And to me, like that's where the power is. The power is in that vulnerability and the strength and being able, because it's not who you were. It's just something you were doing at the time. It's something that happened. And to me, like, I'm weird now. Like, I love hearing people's stories, and like the worse it is, like, especially if I know they've made that switch, or if I can see like they're going to, like, I get so freaking excited. Like, I sat down at lunch the other day with a guy. It's like the coolest thing ever. This guy, he's it's the top morning radio show in our state, and I would say probably in our region, but it's definitely in our state. I started listening to this morning show when I was in high school, all through college. After college, when I started as a financial advisor, I would listen to it every morning on the way to work. This guy DMs me out of the blue and says, I love what you're doing on social media. His name is also Harris. His last name is also Harris, and he has a beard, and he said, I feel like a luncheon is in order. I was like, cool. We sit down, and like all my conversations now, like I love this concept I talked about the other day where, you know, everyone, you can drown in 3 inches of water, and that's where everyone lives. That's where every podcast lives. That's where every piece of content lives. But like, I'm just focused on going deep in every single conversation now. So this dude sits down and just unloads just one thing after another. And like, some of it was stuff I'd heard on the news before, but didn't make that connection. And hearing like the real story behind it, and hearing this thing, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, holy crap. But I was getting so freaking excited because I could see it in his eye that he had that like fight in him, that he was about to make a big transformation, already had, but was really about to take it to the next level and start talking. Ready to pop up. Like starting to talk about it now. And I told him that. I was like, dude, all I got to say is I'm so freaking excited to just watch you grow over the next few years, because it's almost directly proportionate. Sure. The worse it is, like the lower the rock bottom, if they make that switch, the higher they end up going, because that's the strength that they pull from. Like, that's the power. And so now, like, there's nothing someone could say to me that they did, even not just that was done to them, but like the worst, most horrible things that they did. Like, I had a guy comment the other day. Oh, it was one of the things that Sean Whalen had said in his speech. I had like a 1 minute recap of a talk that he gave, and he was like, I don't care if someone, you know, assaulted you or you assaulted someone, and someone just ran with that, like, oh, like you assaulted, like you are like, you know, so you're saying that these, you know, this is the devil, and you're supporting the, like they wouldn't like off. I'm like, yeah, that, like whatever it is, like I don't care how bad it is, if they've changed and they've made that switch, like, I know that it's going to be absolutely incredible, because they're going to be able to use that to reach so many freaking people, and to open up so many people, and to break down so many freaking barriers. It's like, it's literally the only thing I want to do now, is just like have conversations with people and just learn about all the crap and see how they've come out of that crap and done incredible things, or to be able to provide that encouragement that, okay, you're still in it. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Or you're on your way out of it. Let's talk about how to accelerate that, and how to keep making that transformation. Like, to me, that's the most exciting thing ever, because we've all got stuff. Yeah. Every single person that's listening to this right now has stuff. I used to get this one line in my talks, and I would say, what's the one thing in your life that you're pretending isn't a problem? And I would just pause. Because it's everyone's got that thing that just popped in. And they're like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Because until you deal with that, there's really no other topics to discuss or development that needs even approaching until you deal with that.
In my head, I had like a sports montage coming, like, oh, that.
Yeah, like a highlight, a highlight reel, like, like a freaking top 10.
Doing pull-ups and shit.
but I mean, but for me, like, I said that for the first time, like 18 months ago, to a bunch of our insurance agents, and like I literally stood on stage and I said that, and I went, alcohol, and it took me another year before I ever dealt with it. Yeah, another year. And like how big of a hypocrite did I feel when I'm sitting there like, what's the one thing in your, and like I have it and I hadn't dealt with it, but like when I did, it was just like the greatest feeling in the world to be able to think, okay, now what is it? Now what is it? Because it's always going to be something. It's just going to hopefully get smaller and smaller stuff as you move along.
You know, to bring up angles again and kind of how to fix things through the perspective of a different angle. You know, our boy Colby Colbus.
Yeah,
I was really moved by his remarks in the festival we were at. He introduced an angle that I hadn't considered, where he was saying that, you know, the responsibility that we have to share our stories and to be authentic is that somebody is about ready to embark into or just started going through something that you've already done and you've already experienced. Yeah. And the lifeline, the literal, you know, millionaire phone a friend, like, is you. Yeah. And you just don't know it yet. And, you know, to kind of shoot holes in one of the things that we see a lot in success is that whole fake it till you make it type idea. I think instead of, like, you know, wearing the nice watch or all that shit, I think the fake it till you make it is like fake your own relevancy. Yeah. I'm mattering to somebody. I just don't know who it is yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to keep doing this because it's important for me to do it. And that will be a fuel for you that helps you to kind of get through some of the challenge stuff. Because when you're first starting in this whole thing and nobody's watching and everything, it's hard to, like, what the fuck does it matter, man?
I did a live Facebook Live one time, and it just said I am a fraud. And it was one of those like clickbaity things I wanted people to click on. But like I talked about the fact that like I am a fraud, and talked about the fact that if you're doing something that you've never ever done before, but you're doing it with the confidence that you're going to crush it, that in itself is a fraudulent environment to be in. Yeah. Like, I've never done this before, but I'm going to kill it. Like,
I'm the best.
Like no, you're a fraud. Yeah. But you have to be a fraud. That's the only way to succeed is to go into challenges and go into obstacles as though like there's no chance you're going to fail. Like, of course you're going to be able, I've done this a million times, but you've never done it before. So it's like constantly putting yourself in situations where you feel that way. That to me, like that's how you level up, or we talk about like condensing timelines. Like that's the way you do it. But you're right. Like what he was talking about, like if you were to go overseas and you're in combat and some dude just came off the battlefield and it's like, hey, I know where every single one of the mines are. You want me to guide you across?
I love that example.
Be like, nah, man, I'm good. Like I'm gonna
wing it.
I'm just gonna go do some cartwheels. like I just.
What's the fun in that, man?
yeah. Like I don't like my legs. I like spontaneity. Yeah. But dude, this is awesome, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. It is, for those of you that are listening, which is everybody because we're not recording this on video, I just realized, which we usually are, it's 99 degrees in my hotel room by this point because we had to turn off the air conditioner.
It's because of the fire we've been spitting, dude.
It's just because I'm so freaking hot-natured. But I think a lot of people are going to get some really good stuff out of this. Any last jokes that you want to throw out to put you on the spot?
Not really,
okay,
no.
Perfect. That's just the best joke in the way that we can finish it out. So, man, tell everybody where they can find you online.
Well, you know, I'm kind of everywhere. I'm on. Just kidding.
I'm omnipresent.
I'm here and I'm there and I'm nowhere at the same time. So, no, I've tried to do my best to make this as simple as possible. My name is Bryce Prescott, BrycePrescott.com is the place to find my links to my socials, my Twitter, my Instagram, my YouTube channel. My Facebook stuff is there. I'm going to be real. I try to engage with anybody that wants to engage. I don't put up a front like, I'm so busy. If I can't respond, I don't respond. That's what it is. Yeah. And depending on which social you go to, you get a different side of me. Twitter is where I'm the most fucking smart ass. Like, really? Just I'm not even clap back. I'm not on Twitter. I love Twitter. It's so fun. Instagram is a combination of both. My stories are pretty funny. Yeah. And I've got some good messaging that goes on there. Facebook, I'm a little more toned down. Okay. And I put everything on YouTube. I've got all my podcast episodes with video and audio there. I've got other videos I've done. I've got copies of my keynotes. So BrycePrescott.com is where to go to find. I've got a blog and everything there, so just go check it out there.
And if you find yourself at the Salt Lake City airport and you need a ride, just slide in that DM, and he will be right there. He's also got one of the best hat games and shoe games in the podcasting space. So that's
I'll take it, dude. Too. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate the ride. in your car.
Yeah.
And
well, dude, we are in a hotel. Yeah. Anyway, so
that's it. All right, guys, that is the BreadWinner podcast. Again, I'm your host, Tyler Harris, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the BreadWinner podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating on iTunes. For a chance to be on the show, send a screenshot of your iTunes rating to @TylerHarris page on Instagram, where he'll pick one person every single week. See you next time on the BreadWinner podcast.